how do you assess the needs of the future? Because you don't really know what kind of a future scenario is there likely to be. And today it will be very difficult to assess needs of the persons who are going to be there 100 years from now. So that gave rise to an idea of carrying capacity, that we must relate it to the population, we must relate it to levels of consumption, we must relate it to the carrying capacity of the system, the earth or the planetary system, whatever we call it. So we must not go beyond the carrying capacity of the system. We should not try to encroach upon the carrying capacity in a manner which is irreversible. So to the extent the resilience of the system is there, we can stretch ourselves up to those limits. So the stakeholders are not only those who are present today, not the present population, even the future population is a stakeholder. So everybody is a stakeholder, and the whole idea of sustainable development, as I said yesterday, is a compromise between what has been called the frontier economics, where you didn't care about environment at all, and the other is a deep ecology, where you say there should be zero depreciation of the natural capital. So a halfway house between the two. How do we, while conserving the natural capital, have our development process going? In fact, there are certain values which people talk about. One is the efficiency values. Today, because we are talking in terms, there's a thinking that there should be a more market-oriented approach, what we call the new public management policy, replacing the old doctrine of public administration, which is where a lot of reliance is on the market. But many of the critics of this policy, and rightly say so, especially in a developing society where you have a large number of poor people, and those who are above the poverty line are just above the poverty line. You can't really call them rich. So for their health and wealth, and for health and wealth of the environmental system, it is essential that we have a more localized version as far as our strategic planning is concerned, as far as our policy design is concerned, and as far as policy implementation is concerned. So everybody, right from an individual, wherever whether he's in a rural area, whether he's in an urban area, everybody is a stakeholder. The individual, the family, the community, civil society organizations, the government, quasi-government institutions, what we call the parastatals, and the political setup. I mean, because at the end of the day, most of the decisions, whether they are socio-economic decisions, are at a political level. That political level could be the national level. Today, even the globalized level is important. The national level, the subnational level, or the state level, the regional level, and the local level. And local level goes right up to, as I said, if you go into a totally micro framework, it goes up to the individual level. So all these relationships, the social relationships, the economic relationships, and the relationships with the environment or the life supporting systems become very, very relevant, and an integrated approach regarding these is ultimately that whatever we say, the stakeholders working for a common goal, because that's how it started, our common future. It is very difficult to arrive at a consensus. In fact, I was reading a book about law, the modernization of the legal systems. They said in the tribal societies, there was a near unanimity, because it was the customary law which evolved over the years by practice, which was accepted by everybody, except that any outsider was treated as an outsider. I mean, the society did not accept him as part of the tribal group. And as we emerge from the tribal group towards a more civilized system, more rather one would say, not civilized, rather to a more liberal democratic system, there the consensus became difficult, because different people came with different ideas. So you had to settle for a kind of a common minimum program. And that is how the law evolved. The outsider was not a total stranger. He had a place in the system, but At the same time, a consensus became difficult, and the same has been the case with the whole sustainability debate, that globally, for example, in Paris Declaration, USA backed out. Many nations back out because, and as in the Rio summit, as Fidel Castro said, that the Western nations, I mean the developed nations, consume almost 2/3 of the resources of the planet, and we are at a disadvantaged state. So there, I think the dictum which from any stakeholder is, how far can we localize the issues, especially development issues. We have been discussing these things. One of the Arunachal experiments which was displayed in the afternoon, state-specific, region-specific issues, region-specific needs, problems, and how do we respond to that. So first is the assessment of needs at the micro level, at the state level, even at the village level, in an area level. How do we assess the needs? And who articulates the needs? One problem with is the articulation of needs, because those people who are marginalized, who are poor, who are illiterate, they may not be in a position to really articulate their needs. So we need a forum through which there's a fair assessment of their needs, fair assessment of their problems, and then a suitable response to that depending upon our availability of resources. One problem of a localized kind of a planning is what we say bottom-up planning is, we don't have those kind of capacities at that level to plan. So that's why one of the principles which have emerged over the years is the principle of subsidiarity, which emerged, it's a Eurocentric concept which emerged in European Union, that the functions should be assigned to that level where it can be performed the best and where there are capacities to perform those functions. That's why when it comes to solid waste management, it's the municipal board which is relevant, which knows the problems, which can deal with it in the best manner. When it comes to the defense of the country, it is the national government which can deal with it. When it comes to monetary policy or foreign policy, it is the national government. So water supply, housing, waste management, all these things, energy consumption, these are all at the local level. And just to finish my this thing, I would say one of the goals says that the processes, production processes and consumption processes need a relook. I mean, the responsible production and responsible consumption, I think that sums up almost everything. And another challenge, which I think is a challenge which is emerging and to which we have been slow to respond, I mean, even globally we have been slow to respond, is the challenge of urbanization. Today, Uttarakhand is 30% urban. Nationally, it is 32% urban population. It is expected that by 2030 it will be 40 plus, and maybe by 2040 it will be 50% plus, more than that, because decadal growth rate is about 10%. How do we cope up with this urban challenge? Because there the sustainability issues are quite different, as was in the forenoon session it was said that as your consumption levels go up, as you urbanize, your incomes go up, subsequently your consumption levels go up, the waste goes up, the carbon footprints increase. So all these issues are, I think, then everyone, each one of us becomes a stakeholder, each one interprets it in his own way, then how to arrive at a consensus, I think that is the challenge before us.